Hey everybody, I'm the star, clearly, and I'm here to tell you today the story of the wise scholars who traveled to give Jesus of Bethlehem in Judea his birthday presents. And I'm going to be telling it from Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. But I don't need this old thing. I was there. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, I was sent to guide the wise scholars to help them find Jesus, because Google Maps wasn't invented yet. Wise scholars came from the east to Jerusalem asking,
"Where is that child that has been born King of the Jews? For we observed the star at its rising and have come to pay him homage."
When King Herod heard this, he was frightened,
Oh no!
and all Jerusalem with him.
Oh yes,
And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them,
Where is this Messiah supposed to be born?
In Bethlehem of Judea.
At least that's what the prophets say.
Who are you?
What exactly did the prophet say? And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.
Then Herod secretly called for the wise scholars and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage."
Do we have any water left?
No, it's all empty.
Well, I think we're almost there. But not quite. They kept walking and walking.
Are we there yet? You've asked that so many times, but this time we're here.
And there I was, stalked over the place where the child was. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jesus. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, baby Jesus, we brought you some birthday presents. These are the most expensive gifts we could afford, so we know that you're king. I brought some gold.
And I brought frankincense. And here's myrrh. It was from our friend Billy, who died on the way. Rest his soul. But he sends myrrh.
Would you like to stay the night? That would be great, yeah.
Thank you.
Please.
Wise ones, this is a dream with a warning in it. Herod wants to kill the king. You must leave immediately and take a different route.
I feel like we tell this Epiphany story so well. This is one of the stories that people in our church especially probably know better than any others, because this is what we usually do a pageant about. or like this year, a wonderful retelling of scripture with our wonderful teen actors. Thank you so much to Bree, to Carmen, to Rachel, and to Madeline for putting that all together, and to our wonderful film editor and videographer, Carolyn, for that beautiful telling. We know this story, and so when we think about Epiphany, we tell it this way, that it's about one thing, it's about one moment. The moment when these wise ones, the Magi, these leaders, these scholars, show up and recognize Jesus as the one who was foretold. They have heard these prophecies and they travel far, of course, as we sing, and they see baby Jesus and they feel like, wow, it's now, it's happening. This is it. He's the one. I don't know whether they were expecting a baby, but in any case, they recognized what they were looking for. They knew that God had come to be present in our lives in a new way, and things were different, immediately and forever changed. Finally, the moment arrives when this baby is recognized for who he truly is. There's a before and there's an after. But this year I was thinking about who else was in the room, in the stable, in the inn, in the place where it happened, who might have already known what those wise ones figured out. Mary knew who and what that baby was. We know this because even before she gave birth to him, she sang about him in the Magnificat, which we sang and we talked about in Advent this year. Mary knew that this was God, that things were different, that she was called to a vocation different and similar to all other mothers. And Joseph knew. Joseph was told in a dream, two different dreams, really, the dream that this was all real, and then the dream that we heard in today's scripture reading, the dream that said, you got to go. You got to run. Joseph knew who this child was that was in his care, how things were different than they used to be. We also know that the shepherds knew, shepherds who were sung to very sweetly in the fields in a way that you know had to be scary because they had to be told, don't be afraid. We bring you tidings of great joy. Go to Bethlehem and see the child in the manger, who is God, come to earth, who is different than all other babies. Go and find out how the world is different now than it used to be. And I have to imagine that there were other people in Bethlehem that knew too. I have to imagine that there were other people who had already come, other women who had come to check in on this new mother and her new baby. Community members that had come to make sure they had enough food. I have to imagine that they too were transformed by the presence of this child, both similar to and different from the way that we're transformed by the presence of every newborn, brought back to a sense of what matters, brought back to a sense of ourselves. We even have Christmas carols that tell us that the animals knew that baby Jesus was different than other babies, that the cows and the donkeys and the sheep and the pigs and the birds, all those animals that might have been present, recognized Jesus as different. So we call out this moment with the wise ones, with their gifts, as the one moment of recognition, the Epiphany. But sometimes I think that makes it so that it's easy to forget all the other epiphanies, all the other moments when it was clear that things were different, when truth arrives. And even if all those folks already knew, and even if the Magi knew, I wonder, was it known and done, known forever? I kind of don't think so, because I think the kind of weight of that revelation is too much. I think it's too much for people to hold in their hearts and go about their daily lives. I think about Mary pondering these things in her heart, recognizing how different and how special this child was. Can you hold that truth and also parent? I kind of don't think so. Can you hold that truth of divinity fully in your heart and also tell a kid, get out of there and put that down? Give me a hand with this. Get out of my hair. You're making too much noise. All of those things that I think Jesus must have heard growing up, because we all do. Because we're all learning to be in community with each other. We're all learning our role and our place and our relationships. For Jesus to have had a fully human experience, he must have heard things like that. And I think for Mary to say them, for Joseph to say them, they must have had to at least bracket their knowledge of who this child was. And don't we all end up having to do that? The knowledge of how profound and unique a baby is has to fade at least a little bit in order for us to help each other grow up, in order for us to wipe each other's behinds and put on a new diaper, in order for us to feed the 10,000 spoonful of mush, in order for us to wash the clothes again and again and again. I think the revelations have to fade a little bit. And I think that's okay. And more moments came. I think about Mary's life. More moments came when she would have become more aware of who Jesus was again. Reminders, learning these things. We have the story that I'm sure we all remember about Jesus in the temple as a tween, really, trailing off from the back of his family caravan and showing up in the temple and teaching and learning, disappearing without a word and leaving his parents to search for him. I imagine Mary remembering, oh, right, this is who Jesus is. Oh, right, he's not just my kid, he's also God's presence on earth. I imagine Jesus as an adult doing things that reminded Mary again, oh, right, this is who he is. This is who my kid is. This is his character. This is what he was born for. This is what he came to do. That kind of big picture awareness doesn't always stay with us. And sometimes I think we think that's a problem, but I am here to say, I think it's part of the plan. I think it's the only way it can work. I wonder if you've ever had an epiphany, a moment where some profound truth arrived in your life out of nowhere. I wonder if you've ever looked around at the world with new eyes and thought, nothing will ever be the same. I understand my life differently. I understand my vocation differently. I understand my family differently. I understand how things all fit together. I think a true epiphany shows up and it pushes everything else in our lives out of the way. It's so big, it's so important, it's so unique and profound that we hardly have any attention for anything else. All we can do is sit and ponder. Or sometimes all we can do is think about acting on the new thing that we know. Now that I understand how important this is, all I want to do is work on it. Now that I understand how precious this person is to me, all I want to do is be with them. Now that I understand how precious my own life is, all I want to do is try to build a life that honors this new knowledge. It's so big and it's so important, and we postpone everything else. And then life starts to trickle back in. Even with that epiphany, we maybe still have to brush our teeth. We still have to wash our clothes. We still have to go to work, probably, at least for now. We relate to the people around us in some different ways and some the same. And while we still remember in some ways the thing we learned, eventually it starts feeling a little less enormous, or it starts feeling a little less significant, or maybe it even gets a little bit fuzzy. I can think of at least 3 or 4 things in my own life that have been like that. This recognition, I remember a profound epiphany when I was at L'Arche, when I was working with people with developmental disabilities. The arrival on my consciousness that I could separate my value from my accomplishment arrived like a brand new planet in the solar system, like a brand new thing that no one had ever seen before. Now, am I the first person in the world to come to this particular epiphany? Absolutely not. Just like the Magi arrived at Jesus's bedside after a number of other people had already figured out who this baby was and what he meant. Did that make it less profound for them to encounter him? I don't think so. Even if other people have already come to the same realization, and in fact have already tried to tell you about it, coming to that epiphany yourself is different. Believing it is different. Integrating it is different still. And while I can remember how incredibly profound, how life-changing that particular insight was for me, that I, like my housemates, have intrinsic worth that is separated from what I can do or achieve or accomplish, it was so profound. And now I remember what it felt like, sort of, but I don't really remember the experience of how life-changing that was. I don't know. It's hard to access that moment when we have moved on back into the rest of our lives. It was like that in a way to recognize my own sexual orientation as well. Feeling like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. And in fact, it did change a lot of things, and it explained even more things. And if I'd figured it out a little sooner, it might have explained even more things in ways that were helpful to me. But now that it's integrated into my life, now that it's no big deal. It's just part of who I am, how I walk around in the world. I remember the experience, sort of coming to this understanding, but I can't access that feeling of weight. And there's part of me that's a little bit sad about that, because I remember how moving it was to think, oh, I understand things differently now, and I can forgive myself for things that I didn't understand. And now I can say all of that, but I can't quite remember what it felt like. But watching people interact with Jesus over the course of his life, through all of our scriptures and all of our testimony passed down to us over all of these many generations, has taught me that it's okay. It's okay to not remember exactly how profound something was. Some things we learn once, and some things we learn many times. And I think it doesn't take away from how important that epiphany was, to say now, I can't really quite put myself back in the same place, because I'm not the same person who learned those things. I am the person who became after I learned those things, and others as well. And I suspect it's the same way for you. The epiphanies that arrived on your consciousness, whole and perfect and life-changing. The encounters with an actual other that changed your way of understanding the world. The new ideas that shook your hierarchy of importance. The insights that changed the way you interacted with the world, or with God, or with yourself. You are now who you are, because you are the one who became yourself after you learned those things. Some of them come back. My notion that I am separated from my achievements, I have to relearn that every few years. I don't know whether it's because society is trying to keep teaching me the opposite thing, or whether there is just something in me that wants to be in control of my own value. Either one, whatever the reason, I have to relearn that. I relearn it every few years. That epiphany circles back in the same way that I think Mary probably relearned who Jesus was. You can't live your life very well, or really even very comfortably, in that state of profound awareness. There's too much else going on. I have too many people I need to relate to and things I need to do. And I swing back and forth between understanding like, wow, there's this intrinsic value in me that can never be shaken, that can never be set down or changed, that I am not in control of. And swinging back to like, but I still have to be a person who acts in the world. I still have responsibilities and connections. And one of them is to use the gifts that I've been given to try to make a difference. It doesn't make me more valuable to do those things, but it is part of my vocation. We swing back and forth and I relearn the insight on one side and the insight on the other. And that's okay. We have signs and wonders to guide us, friends. We have stars in the sky and stars around us in the people around us. We have the redwoods and the streams, the sun and the moon and the clouds and the fog. We have occasional frost on our neighbors' roofs. We have beauty and rest. We have challenge and growth. We have humor. We have so many things around us that can guide us to our next epiphany. And my prayer for all of us in this moment, in this season where we are being, most of us anyway, a little more cautious than we used to be, even a few weeks ago, back to a little mini hibernation as we wait for the wave that we're in to crest and fall again. My prayer for you is that you remain open, that you forgive yourself for forgetting things you have learned in the past, and trust that the star will reappear, that when you need to know it again, it will make itself known to you, and that you keep your eyes and ears open for whatever way you will be guided to take the next steps. That when guidance shows up for you in a dream or elsewhere, and says it's time to return home by another way, you're ready to listen, and you're ready to be changed, and you're ready to become who and what you're going to become next. Amen.